Relationships between vocalization forms and functions in infancy. Preliminary implications for early communicative assessment and intervention by Sanetti, Nathani Iyer, and David Ertmer. For this study, form is considered sound or vocal productions, and function is social communication characteristics. Form and function of infant vocalizations have proceeded along separate paths. This study examines the nature of the relationships between form and function in the pre-linguistic and early linguistic period. If form and function go together in infancy, we may need to pay closer attention not only to the forms themselves but also to the context in which these forms typically occur. Although this careful attention to forms and functions can be demanding, it may be important in helping children with communication deficits develop typical relationships between various forms and functions. Vocalization forms in infancy. Most researchers agree that typically developing infants seem to universally proceed through 4 to 5 developmental levels on their path from crying to the production of first words. Since many different researchers classify vocalizations differently, one model had to be chosen that was comprehensive, internally consistent, and able to reliably detect differences in vocalization forms across ages. Nathani and others' model for the development of vocalization forms was chosen since it met the above criteria, and the study used archived data from this research that had been classified for vocalization forms. According to this model, there are 5 levels in the development of vocalization forms. The first level is from age 0 to 2 months. It includes crying, vegetative sounds, and quasi-resonant nuclei. The second stage is from 1 to 4 months. It contains fully resonant nuclei, chuckling and laughter, and back and glottal consonants. The third stage is from 3 to 8 months. It includes adult-like words, vocal play or squeals, and marginal babbling. The fourth stage is from 5 to 10 months. It includes canonical syllables and whispers. And the fifth stage is from 9 to 18 months. It includes complex canonical syllables, jargon, well-formed diphthongs, and it may overlap with the production of real words. The forms of vocalizations an infant is producing at the 5th level may be influenced by the language the infant is learning. Infants within a given age group can produce vocalizations from more than one level, and infants across different age groups can produce vocalizations from the same level. Several theoretical proposals have been made regarding the functions of infant vocalizations. A few of them are listed here. Prelinguistic vocalizations were initially thought to be random and reflexive with no meaning to the infant. Infants use vocalizations to actively explore their articulatory movements and respiratory capabilities. Vocalizations served as a source of self-stimulation and promoted further vocal development. Vocalizations conveyed information about infants' affects and attention. Vocalizations reflected their awareness of and information about the surrounding context, which reflected an early form of social interaction or learning readiness. Since adults respond to vocalizations as if they were communicative signals, it was suggested that infant vocalizations serve a social regulatory function or facilitate learning. Stark and others' scheme to describe the development of vocalization functions was chosen because it was reliable and valid. Level 1 is from age 0 to 2 months. It includes fussing, crying, and vegetative noises. Level 2 is from 2 to 5 months. It includes face-to-face interaction, neutral or positive facial expressions. Level 3 is from 6 to 9 months. It's produced as infants interact with objects. No interaction with adults when producing vocalizations are in this level. And level 4 is from 10 to 18 months. It has communicative intent, and it's produced in social interaction exchanges with objects and people. And the relationships between form and function. Here are a few of the researchers on this topic. Schatz proposed that communicative subsystems, which include form, function, and cognition, initially develop independently of each other. Communicative growth occurs when the independent subsystems become integrated. And Aller proposed that although some prelinguistic speech-like vocalization forms, such as protophones, tend to occur more often in some contexts, infants can produce vocalization forms across a variety of social contexts and very early in life. The same protophone can occur across a variety of social contexts, and different protophones can occur within the same social context. For example, a 6-month-old may produce squeals when mouthing or banging objects, when staring at lights in the room, or when interacting with his or her caregiver. There are not many studies investigating vocalization form-function relationships in infancy. There are also 3 main difficulties in interpreting the findings from the literature. The first one is the available evidence has often categorized form in overly broad terms. Form-function relationships have often been examined in very restricted circumstances, such as only interactions with the caregiver were analyzed. And the last one, the relationship has been investigated at only a few and discrete ages within the first year of life. The purpose of this research is to increase our understanding of early communicative development and to provide potential clinical implications for early communicative assessment and intervention. If associations between form and function are documented in the present study, along with developmental changes in these relationships, the findings could be used to assess whether children with communicative deficits have delays and/or atypical patterns of association. New insights into form-function relationships also have the potential to enhance clinical intervention practices by offering a continuum of vocal forms and appropriate associative functions. The methods for this study include a mixed cross-sectional and longitudinal research design, 20 randomly selected infants who had been examined by Stark and others, and there were 5 infants in each age group. The age groups were from 3 to 5 months, 6 to 8 months, 9 to 13 months, and 16 to 20 months. Each infant was audio and video recorded in their homes 5 times within the age range for each group. Approximately 40-minute sessions, which included 10 to 20 minutes of mother-infant interaction, 10 to 20 minutes of solitary play, and 5 minutes of feeding. An utterance was defined as a vocalization or series of vocalizations separated from all others by 2 seconds of silence. If more than one form or function has been assigned to an utterance, it received the highest form or function within that utterance. For example, if an utterance had both a vowel-like element and a canonical syllable, the utterance would have been assigned the form level associated with the canonical syllable, because the canonical syllable is more complex in its articulatory characteristics than a single vowel-like element. Form. The infant utterances were classified for form according to the Stark Assessment of Early Vocal Development Revised system. There were 5 levels based on order of emergence seen in typically developing infants: reflexive, control of phonation, expansion, basic canonical syllables, and advanced forms. Judgments for form were made from listening to audio tapes alone, so that judgments of vocalization types would not be based on function characteristics that might be evident on tapes. There was no distinction between word and non-word-like vocalizations. For function, categories were determined based on facial expression, movement cues from videotapes, and accompanying caregiver responses, not on the basis of auditory information to minimize bias from the form of the vocalizations. The 4 major categories were reflexive, reactive, activity, and communicative behaviors. The cross-classification tabulations, forms and functions were cross-tabulated for each utterance, and the number of utterances at each combination of form and function were added up for each infant. They were then divided by the total number of utterances for that particular form to obtain proportions of utterances at each function for that form. The results. Earlier developing forms were mostly associated with earlier developing functions, and later developing forms were mostly associated with later developing functions. There were some exceptions, such that some forms were associated with a variety of functions, and vice versa. Early emerging form levels were more often associated with early emerging than later emerging function categories, and vice versa. For the younger age groups, results showed a significant association between form and function. The strength of the form-function association was also significant. For the older age groups, results also revealed a significant association between form and function, although not as strong as in the younger groups. The strength of the association between form and function was significant for this group as well. In conclusion, the trend suggests that form and function co-emerge in infancy. Infants appear to start by using simple forms to express simple functions. As infants begin to use more complex forms, they become more communicative in function and appear to demand increasingly elaborate responses from the caregiver. Impressions of the study. Overall, the design of the research was strong. However, the cross-sectional design of the study made it difficult to be certain whether observed differences between younger and older infants were a result of age effects or were because different infants were included in the age groups. A larger longitudinal study would improve detection of more subtle age-related changes in form-function relationships. This research could be applied clinically by examining forms with their associated functional domains. Unusual coupling of forms with functions may also turn out to be an early diagnostic indicator of language learning difficulties. Consideration of form-function relationships is also likely to have an important role when planning intervention.